Hey, good morning, everybody. Let me cycle through and find the game board. Alright, so welcome back to another Conflict of Heroes. I dare call it tutorial, where we talk about different aspects of the game. Oh, I'm off the table edge. What we're going to talk about today is APs and CAPs. So we got action points is what AP stands for, and command action points, the CAPs. So what I have here, I'm just going to rotate this board, is this is off the demo still. It's mission number 6, and we're not going to play through it. We're just going to use it because it does show quite a few different unit types. The last game we played wasn't Partisans. I forget what it was called, but it was all just infantry. This has a little bit of artillery, some armored half-tracks, a couple light tanks, and then some different equipment for the Russians as well. Also on this map, this is an example of where your map, you can have your traditional 2D map, but then when you have hills, I just kind of put this camera here down on the table, the hills actually pop up from the map, giving you that relief, kind of a 3D relief effect. So the forests and stuff still stay out of your way, but the hills, it's a subtle reminder that, you know, the game does have a full 3D capability, and even on my 2D map, this just really helps to point out where the hills are located. It helps you understand why line of sight might be blocked, or why I might be on this hex, but I can't see somebody over on this hex because you can't see through the mountain. It's a very cool, very subtle effect, but it is there. And then combine that with your 2D view, even though you're looking straight down, you might not see the 3D effect pop so much, but you can still, it might be hard to see here on the camera, but you can still see kind of the contours of where the hill edges are. So you still, it assists you with your hills. I like it. It's very, very cool. But we're here to talk about caps. So I'm going to zoom in on these units, and I'm going to rotate my camera. So if you just hold the right mouse button for a couple seconds, you get this little camera icon on your screen, and you can just, while you hold the right mouse button, move your mouse left or right to rotate the camera. This makes it easier to see stuff. So if I zoom in, we've got wagons, which would be supplies. They don't really have combat stats. But then we've got, here's a Panzer IV-D, a Panzer III-H, Panzer III-E, Panzer 38T. So this, because this was the Awakening the Bear 4142, they didn't include a whole lot of Tigers and Panthers, because a lot of that stuff is saved for the Storms of Steel game, which is where you're going to have your, the idea was to focus on like the Battle of Kursk. And so I know for history buffs, you know, you might look back and go, well, you know, they were developing the Panther and the Tiger during that time. But I think a lot of folks mostly agree that the widespread use and introduction of those tanks was in 43. So they might have been around, but weren't really used until later. So they kind of replicate that here in the game by just having like the Panzer IVs and things like that. That's why we won't see Tigers. Now we do have some guns. There's a Flak 88. That was the dreaded 88 cannon. Here's some regular anti-tank guns. Now they are in the same hex because I'm just going to show you. Well, I'll say that for later. Mounting and dismounting units, that you can do that. So you could mount this gun to this truck and drive it somewhere, which does affect your APs and CAPs, and that's what I really want to focus on. So I'm just excited because this game really does have a lot of depth. It's not just infantry, it's all kinds of combined arms. You even have later on where you can call in airstrikes. There's artillery, mortars, which I think up on this other side of the board you have mortar support. Let's see, there's a mortar team. So this actually does have all the big elements of a nice tactical war game, and all those actions to do everything, firing, moving, it all takes action points. Now the thing with this game that you have to understand is there's a lot of information that's abstract. when you look at armor values or defensive values for vehicles and things like that, it's not necessarily based on the numerical thickness of armor itself. What it is, it's an abstract representation of different things affecting the armor. It could be, in addition to the thickness of the armor, the sloping that might be there. It could be the quality of the metal that was used. I mean, there's just a lot of factors that go into making a number. So when I look at the defensive value here of this vehicle, which is 16 from the front, that represents a lot of things. The strength of the armor, you know, when you look at the attack values, it's not only like this 2 here against armored vehicles. That represents how, like, the caliber of the weapon, the training of the crew. So there's all these different abstract factors that go into making a stat. Well, what does that have to do with caps? Well, the caps and APs, those are abstract representations also of training, the unit preparedness. APs specifically are what are assigned to individual units when you activate them. So for example, I'm on this Panzer IV. Let's say I want to have this Panzer IV move out, shoot, or do different activities. So when I click on him, he is now the active unit, and the game, because I have it set up to do random action points, it rolls 3 die 6 off screen, and it gives me the highest die roll and the lowest die roll, and adds those together to give me a number. Now I ended up with a 4. That means all 3 of those dice rolled really, really poorly. So those action points represent fuel, ammunition, the unit's preparedness. Are they tired? Are they wide awake? Did they get the orders from the higher command to go and do this particular activity? It represents all those things. It's your unit's ability to do stuff. And so with 4 APs, I can't do a whole lot. So that could mean any number of things that, you know, they receive the order and this guy is busy kicking on the clutch trying to get it out of neutral and into a forward gear so he can move. And because that took time, he's not able to move as far as other folks. So the thing that I really encourage folks to do, well, this is what I do. I wish everyone could do it. But I don't look at this as abstract. I look at it as narrative. And I know a lot of folks, well, I won't say a lot of folks. I have read from some folks that this is what they say makes the game feel gamey, because there's no set structure necessarily. Every unit you activate gets random APs, and therefore they all do a different amount of things. There's no set, you know, infantry always does this, tanks always do this. You never know what you're going to get when you activate something. And for me, I think that's great, because it also represents your ability as a commander, the analysis paralysis, you know, your command decision paralysis. Just because I can see everything on the board and I have a good God's eye view of what's going on, that doesn't mean the actual individual leaders working down here know what's going on. And nothing ever works perfect. If I wanted to move with 4 APs, I might not be able to move far, because just because I see on the game map that that's a road, I don't know the condition of the road. So this vehicle might got stuck in a poor part of the road and can't move very well. So it's all narrative. People say abstract. I like to say narrative. So I've got 4 action points. So what do I do with these? Well, really, action points, I can use it to move, which is this number value up here in the upper right hand corner of the counter. So it would take me 1 of my action points to move 1 hex of open terrain. Now, depending on the type of terrain, such as these trees, they have a lot of different terrain. Sometimes when you move on road, you'll get like some road bonus movement points, which would be reflected by these little symbols underneath the move. This is a tracked vehicle. So 1 point to move. If I move into woods, it might take 2 action points to move, because it's a rougher going. And that's how you can determine kind of how far you can move. So 4 action points, of all open terrain, I can move 4 hexes. Now, the other thing you can do is shoot. Shooting is determined by this value up here in the upper left-hand corner. So to fire one of your combat values, either against soft targets or armored targets, the blue value, red is soft targets. Think of that as like the blood when you shoot squishy infantry, and then blue is the armor, cold steel, cold is blue, however you want to remember it. But this value here is how many points it takes to fire. So with 4 action points, I could fire once. And then I would have 1 action point remaining that I could either use to move, or I can end the activation for this unit. I would lose that 1 point, but then I'd be able to go on and activate another unit. Now, here's the thing. With the computer game, you have a couple options with your points. They have what's called persistent APs, and then they have the traditional board game value. Because this is on the computer actually has a great ability to track APs better than me. If I had to use this many units and track all these units APs individually, it would take a lot of graph paper. It'd be a pain. But the computer, what it can do is if you play persistent APs, every time I click on somebody, see, I'm not playing persistent AP, so this won't show me, but I could click on this truck, and this unit would remember that it has 4 APs, and then I would activate this truck, and I could see how many APs it has, and I can actually just kind of look through my vehicles to decide which one I want to move. And the computer will remember how many APs I use from that unit and still let me move on to other units. In a normal non-persistent AP, once I'm done with this vehicle and I want to look at a different vehicle, I have to end his turn. He can't do, even if he had that 1 AP, I couldn't come back to him later in the game. See, what happens is if I'm done with him, let's say I move him once, then the enemy does something. Oh, I got a bonus move because I was on the road. Okay, see, let's say I was done with this guy and I want to use another unit now. If I end his turn, this stripe means he's done for the turn. Now I can use somebody else. If you have persistent APs, I could go ahead and take an action with somebody else and then come back to this guy later and use his remaining APs. So in a classic board game sense, once I'm done, any unused APs are gone, action points are gone. In persistent, I can come back to him and use the rest of his APs later. Maybe I want to save them to shoot at an enemy who exposes himself later. So you kind of have to decide how would you like to play. Honestly, I think persistent APs with the aid of the computer makes for a very much more dynamic game because it gives you a lot more flexibility. For that true board game sense though, you want to turn the persistent AP off, and then you have to manage your units a lot more closely. Like, am I really done with him? Alright, so that's the basics of the AP. To do an action takes your APs. Now, you have something called CAPs, command action points. Again, this is a abstracted narrative element, and it reflects your overall forces, what I call command and control and supply chains. What those CAPs allow you to do is augment your ability to provide APs for your units. Okay, so there's a couple things you can do. One, I can come back to this unit and use CAPs. They're universal. I can use CAPs to give this guy some APs so that he could go ahead and take another action. Even though he's used up all his personal APs, I could use CAPs, which might represent a fuel truck coming up and giving him more fuel so he can move a couple more spaces, or the ammunition truck pulls up alongside him, gives him some ammo, and then he can shoot. So if I wanted to shoot this unit at an enemy, I would have to convert some of these CAPs to action points, and I could do that by clicking this button right here, convert.
Ja, Herr Hauptmann.
And see, I've given him 1 action point, and his little activated bar went away. because he's got an action point he could do something with. So that's so cool. These caps allow you to take a unit that's already done actions, give him some action points, and he can take another activation. That is important because when we have units that are coming down, if these, let's say these folks were expended, they've already taken their turn, and this Russian vehicle right here, let's say moved down a little bit closer, well, what I could do is I could highlight one of these units, give him some caps enough to shoot, and then he could do defensive fire. So those caps give you a lot of power, but you gotta be careful because you have limited amount to use on all of your troops. It's not like, you know, you have a whole bunch. Like I have 12. That might seem like a lot, but to spread amongst all my units on the southern part of the map here and the northern part, in order for them to just keep doing actions, you know, I'm gonna burn through those real quick. So you have to decide and think a little bit strategically too. Do I not activate my frontline troops and wait for the enemy to get closer? Or do I go ahead and move them around a little bit to put them in better defensive spots and then save my caps? So when the enemy does pop into view, I can use caps to activate a unit and then have them shoot. So again, lots of strategic things to think about. Now the other thing you can do here is you can convert your caps to roll bonus, like to hit. Okay, so let's say I don't think this guy can actually hit. I'm gonna give him some caps here.
Ja, Herr Hauptmann. Ja,
okay, I've
Herr
got 3
Hauptmann.
caps. Okay, good. This vehicle is in his line of sight, but it's an impossible shot, probably because he's in woods, and against armored vehicles I only have a bonus of 2 to hit. It's not very good, so they call that an impossible shot. Now what you can do is spend caps to convert those to a roll bonus. So what I can do is give him 1 cap. Now this here lets me convert that cap back. Like if I decide I don't want to take the shot. Like see, that still says impossible.
Ja, Kamerad.
That's still impossible. I can't hit that guy. So if I change my mind and don't want to convert my caps into a +1 on my attack score, I can just put those back and save them. But let's just say, for example, that I was able to attack.
Ja, Kamerad.
Before I make my attack roll, I have to assign how many caps I want to use to hit bonus, essentially, and then I would make my attack. Okay, well I knew that was gonna miss, but I was just demonstrating. So what that allows me to do, again, is that field commander, I could, since that unit's done, we'll end his activation. I'll highlight this guy. He's got 6 action points. Let's see. He himself has an impossible shot. How about against him? Well, I have a 5. Why is he so hard to hit? He's got 15 forward defense. Oh, because he's got really strong armor. It's a 15 defense. And he's +1 defense for being in the woods. So he's got, I have to roll basically I have to get a 16, a score of 16 or better to hit. I have a +5 bonus. Well, I could hit. I don't know why it says that's an impossible shot. Oh, what's the range? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's at 8 hexes. That means he's at long range. So there's a penalty to shoot beyond your range. I think if I spend me a cap, a bonus to hit.
Ja, Kamerad.
So I'm going to take one of my caps, my universal cap points. Now let's see if that gives me a 2% chance to hit. So that's what the caps do, is they basically give you a +1 to hit, and you're allowed to spend up to 2 caps. So again, you have to think about spending those caps. Do I use them to activate a used unit? Do I use them to, give extra points to a unit to do things? Sometimes if I activate a unit here, and let's say instead of 6 activation points I ended up only getting 5, well, I could shoot once for 3. I'd have 2 leftover action points, what I could do is go ahead and give my unit an extra cap. Then he would have 3. He could shoot again. So those caps are very, very powerful. And I think that's another reason why people said that's kind of gamey, because, you know, you can just, oh, he's already been used, but now I can go ahead and activate him again and he could shoot to defend himself. Well, the reason why I think that's actually okay is because, again, don't think of the caps as being a gamey element. Think of it as being a narrative element, and it represents all kinds of stuff. Maybe at the last second when that machine gun looks like he was out of ammo and was reloading and couldn't get to shoot an enemy who just walked up on him because he was already activated, you spend some caps, activate him, he takes a shot to return fire. That could mean, hey, at the last second he got the gun unjammed or loaded up with ammo and he was able to defend himself. Because for me, I think what's gamey is if I have this unit here who's been activated and the enemy starts sneaking up on him, and he can see turn after turn that this enemy is moving forward and I can't shoot with it because he's been activated. See, to me that's kind of gamey, you know. There's no final opportunity fire. But if I have some caps, I can surprise my opponent, and when my opponent gets close enough, I say, oh, activate, blah, blah, blah. He was only playing possum. You know, gives you a chance to defend yourself, but you have to be smart with your caps. So like for here, I used a cap to give myself a bonus to hit. That's only 2% chance to hit. If I give myself one more cap,
Ja, Kamerad.
and I got 8%. So you might say, well, Eddie, okay, if you're saying narrative, how could spending caps give you a better chance to hit? Well, again, think of the narrative. It's an abstract value that represents all kinds of stuff. This could be your squad leader or the tank commander or the gunner who calms his nerves. He's looking through the sight and now he has a better picture. Because this is an open battlefield, these vehicles, you can't assume that they're just in one spot. Maybe they're moving. Maybe this vehicle took a second to stop before it turns position to continue moving, and during that split second of where he stops, I have an opportunity to shoot. My 8% chance to hit, and I think I missed. Let's see. I missed. But, you know, it's those things that helps you build a story when you play. So when you use your APs and your caps, please don't think of it as a gamey element of where, you know, this just gives me how many actions I can do or it's random. Think of it as the narrative. Why are my folks being able to do these things using these points? But I hope that gives you just a basic understanding of what action points are, how you get them. There's another way to get them too. In the base game, you can set this up to match. Every unit has a default of 7 action points. Getting variable action points is actually an optional rule, and you don't have to use it. You can set it up to where every unit gets 7 action points. The only reason I like to play with variable is, again, it's that narrative. Not every unit is equal. Some units might be set up in a more advantageous position than others. You know, these guys at the moment might be more motivated to go. And I like that because this game doesn't have separate like squad leader counters, so you don't have that person to give bonuses to combat or rally and whatnot. And so that's what those caps and those APs represent, is the built-in squad leader qualities to your units. And so that's why I play with variable, because sometimes things just don't go your way, or everything is lined up really well and it goes your way and you end up having a lot of action points. So those are things to think about when you play. Do I want persistent, or do I want traditional board game value? Do I want variable, or do I want the traditional 7 APs per unit? So things to think about when you play. So for me, it's non-persistent AP. I might, the more I play, I might go to persistent because the computer helps track those APs. But currently, for that board game experience, it's non-persistent APs and variable per unit. And that's it for APs and CAPs. So I hope, when you try out the demo, or if you have the game, it gives you a better understanding. Or if you actually play the board game, hopefully that makes a lot more sense to you. But if you have any questions about APs or CAPs, go ahead and ask. I'll see what I can share with you, or look it up for you. Or if you have questions in general about the game, go ahead and ask that. Or if there's something else specifically you want to see, go ahead and let me know, and I'll see if I can put it up in a video for you. But I think that will cover it. That was pretty long, so we'll go ahead and end it. Let me tab over here and end it. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.